Here is the ID Parts OM642 oil cooler seal kit. You can tell by the little sweet postcard that we include, which gives you a photo overview of all the gaskets you will receive, as well as a list of the important torque specs that you need to know. Keep this handy because it'll save you some time looking stuff up. This is the oil cooler seal, and there are two of them obviously, and this is the purple version. Again, if you're doing this job, you want to get the purple version. This is the revised oil cooler seal. It's got a Viton material to it, and they last longer. Again, they don't solve the problem 100%, but these are probably 99% better than what the original orange ones were. Big items in the seal kit obviously are the two intake manifold gaskets. You have to take off both intake manifolds and left and right sides, so you need two intake manifold gaskets. Luckily, the intake manifold gaskets are the same left and right, they're identical, so you don't need to worry about keeping left and right separate. Intake manifold on this engine actually has coolant running through it in order to cool the intake gases as they come into the engine to improve efficiency. However, that means that when you take the intake manifolds off, you're also going to spill a lot of coolant, so you should also have some coolant on hand. This is the intake manifold connecting pipe. The intake manifolds have coolant going through them, and this is the pipe that connects one intake manifold to the other so that the coolant can flow. Can't buy the O-ring separately, so you have to buy this pipe. Luckily, they're not too expensive and they're included in the seal kit. You also have a collection of O-rings for the EGR cooler. There's a small one as well as a larger one, and then one that connects one of the EGR pipes to the intake manifold. This gasket, which connects the EGR cooler to the intake manifold, there's a pipe that goes up and around, and this is the piece that seals those two. If you don't replace this, you'll have a pretty nasty EGR leak. You don't want that. Also included in the oil cooler seal kit is the ID Parts Turbocharger Installation Kit. This kit includes all the items that you need to do or you need to replace when you're replacing the turbocharger. As I said, the biggest hurdle with the OM642 oil cooler seals is that you have to take the turbocharger out. Okay, here is the contents of the turbocharger installation kit all laid out. Now, I'll go through them one by one, so hopefully you can recognize everything as you go through the job. These two gaskets are for the exhaust manifold, the mixing manifold. One goes on each exhaust manifold to the mixer. This larger one here connects to the downpipe. This one here connects the turbocharger to that exhaust manifold collector. These two are the two gaskets for the EGR elbow tube that again connects to that. Over here you've got a collection of O-rings. This is the O-ring that connects to the turbocharger to the upper intercooler pipe. Whenever you take off the upper intercooler pipe, you want to replace this O-ring. You have to take that pipe up kind of all the time if you're doing a fuel filter or whatever, so always have one of these around. Now these two are the two gaskets for the turbocharger pedestal. On this engine, the turbocharger sits on a pedestal, which is actually the way that it gets fed oil, and on some models coolant as well. This is the bottom of the pedestal where it connects to the block. Now this is a very complicated gasket. As I said, it's got oil ports for just for feed and return oil lines, as well as coolant flow. Depending on the year of the engine, the turbocharger may or may not have a coolant loop within it, but the pedestal is cooled. This is the gasket for the top of the pedestal that goes to the turbocharger. Now we also include a full set of bolts. These bolts, or the bag of bolts, are for all the connections to the exhaust collector manifold. The reason we include them is that these bolts are usually, one, very, very corroded, but two, they go through heat cycles all the time. They're constantly being heated up to 1,000, 1,200 degrees and then down, so they get very, very brittle. We see a lot of these bolts break on the way out, and a lot of times they also break if you try to put them back in and try to torque them, and you don't want a broken bolt inside of something that's in the very, very back of the engine where the turbocharger is, so we always recommend you replace them. Then you've got 3 bolts here for the connection to the downpipe.